my wife declared. I'm not moving to that boring small town for your job. I replied, I understand. Then I took the promotion anyway and moved alone. When she discovered my boring job paid me $600,000 per year, her reconciliation messages started coming. My name is Marcus Hale, and at 33 years old, I've apparently peaked as a software architect, which sounds way cooler than it actually is until you realize it mostly involves sitting in meetings explaining to people why their revolutionary app idea would cost approximately $7 million and require technology that hasn't been invented yet. But hey, the paycheck was decent, the benefits were solid, and I got to work from home 3 days a week, which meant I could attend Zoom calls in my boxer shorts while pretending to be a functioning professional from the waist up. The American dream, folks. So when my boss Leonard, a guy who wears golf polos to everything including funerals, probably, pulled me aside last month and told me about this incredible opportunity in some small town I'd never heard of, I figured it was one of those things where they offer you a fancy title and expect you to work 80-hour weeks for basically the same money. You know the drill. Congratulations, you're now Senior Executive Vice President of doing the same crap you did before. Yeah, no thanks. I've seen that movie and the ending sucks. Except Leonard wasn't playing games this time. He dropped the actual details on me like he was dealing cards at a high-stakes poker table, and let me tell you, every card was an ace. Division head. Full relocation package. Base. Free. Because apparently in small towns they just have space for cars, like it's not a precious commodity you have to sacrifice your firstborn child to obtain. The math was so obvious it hurt. Take this job, and suddenly I'd be living like a king instead of cramming myself into our overpriced 2-bedroom apartment where I could literally hear our neighbors' arguments about who forgot to buy almond milk. I drove home that evening with the promotion paperwork sitting in my passenger seat like it was made of pure gold, already running the numbers in my head, already imagining what I'd say to Claire, my wife, my partner, the woman I'd been married to for 6 years and supposedly built a life with. Even though lately it felt more like we were 2 roommates who occasionally had sex and split the cable bill. But this was big news. Career-changing, life-changing, finally affording to have kids if we wanted them kind of news. She'd be excited, right? She had to be excited. This was everything we'd been working toward. I found Claire in our living room. Well, living room is generous. It was more like a room where we'd shoved a couch and pretended it was spacious, scrolling through Instagram with a glass of wine that probably cost more than my car payment. She was wearing one of those athleisure outfits that costs $200 despite being made from the same material as a trash bag, and her hair was done up in that messy bun style that takes 45 minutes and 17 YouTube tutorials to achieve. She looked up when I walked in, gave me that smile that used to make my heart race but now just made me feel tired, and said, "Hey babe, how was work?" "Actually, really good," I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice because I didn't want to oversell it before I'd even explained. Leonard talked to me about a promotion today, a big one. Her eyes lit up for exactly half a second before returning to her phone. "Oh yeah? What kind of promotion?" This was it. The moment. I sat down next to her, turned to face her like we were about to have an actual conversation for the first time in months, and laid it all out. Division head of the new regional office they were opening. Massive salary increase. Relocation package that would cover everything. Stock options. Company car. The works. I watched her face as I talked, waiting for the excitement to kick in, waiting for her to jump up and hug me and say something about how this was amazing and we should celebrate. Instead, she just blinked at me. Then she blinked again. Then she said, in the same tone you'd used to tell someone their fly was unzipped, "Where?" "Millbrook," I said. "It's about 3 hours north, kind of a smaller town, but the opportunity is." "Marcus." She set down her wine glass with the kind of precision that meant I was about to get lectured. "I am not moving to some boring small town. Ever." She said it like I'd just suggested we relocate to a submarine at the bottom of the ocean and spend our days studying algae. She said it like the very concept of living anywhere that didn't have at least 4 artisanal coffee shops per block was a personal insult to her existence. She said it with such absolute finality that for a second I forgot how to form words. "Claire, this is a massive opportunity." I tried again, keeping my voice steady even though inside I was already feeling that familiar frustration building up like steam in a kettle. We're talking about serious money here. Life-changing money. We could actually afford a house with a yard. Maybe start thinking about a yard. She actually laughed. Not a cute laugh. One of those laughs that makes you feel about 2 inches tall. What am I going to do with a yard, Marcus? Garden? Take up beekeeping? Learn to square dance. She picked up her phone again, already dismissing the entire conversation. I have a life here. Friends. My yoga studio. Naomi and Kelsey. The gallery. Everything I care about is in this city. I sat there for a moment, watching her scroll through pictures of other people's brunches, and something clicked in my brain. Not a loud click. More like a quiet one. The kind of click that happens when you suddenly realize you've been trying to solve a puzzle with pieces that don't fit, and maybe they were never supposed to fit in the first place. Okay, I said, forcing a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. I understand. And I did understand. I understood perfectly. I understood that when Claire said everything I care about, she apparently meant everything except me. Except us. Except the possibility of building something bigger than rooftop brunches and overpriced spin classes. I understood that she'd just looked at the biggest opportunity of my career and dismissed it faster than she'd swipe left on a dating app. But here's what she didn't understand. I'd already made my decision the moment Leonard offered me that job. I'd already run the numbers, already imagined the house, already pictured myself not having to stress about money every time the credit card bill came. I'd already chosen my future, and apparently, Claire had just chosen hers. So I smiled at my wife, nodded like I was agreeing with her, and went to the bedroom to start researching houses in Millbrook. Because if there's one thing I've learned in 33 years of life, it's this. Sometimes the most important conversations are the ones you have with yourself. And I'd just had a pretty illuminating one. In my head, I was already picking out curtains for a house Claire would never see. And honestly, I was okay with that. Look, I'm not an idiot. I know how marriage is supposed to work. You talk things through. You compromise. You sit down like two rational adults and discuss major life decisions over a bottle of wine and some takeout. And then you come to a mutual agreement that makes both people feel heard and valued. That's the theory, anyway. That's what all the marriage counselors and self-help books and your Aunt Karen, who's been divorced 3 times, will tell you. Communication is key. Partnership matters. Blah, blah, blah. So I tried. I really, genuinely tried to have that conversation with Claire, because despite what happened in Chapter 1, yeah, I know you were there. You read it. I wasn't ready to just throw in the towel on 6 years of marriage without at least making an effort. Maybe she'd been caught off guard. Maybe she needed time to process. Maybe once I laid out the actual financial benefits in a way that didn't sound like I was reading from a corporate brochure, she'd see the light, and we could make this work. Hope springs eternal, right? Or maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment. Could go either way. I waited until Friday evening, because Friday evenings are supposed to be good for these conversations. Everyone's relaxed. The work week is over. There's no immediate stress hanging over your head. I even picked up her favorite Thai food on the way home. The fancy place that charges $18 for pad Thai, because apparently regular pad Thai is for peasants. And got us a bottle of that wine she likes that tastes like someone liquefied a pine tree, but costs $40, so it must be sophisticated. I set it all up on our tiny excuse for a dining table, lit a candle because I'm not a total Neanderthal, and waited for her to get home from her Pilates class or wherever she'd been. She walked in at 7:30, took one look at the setup, and said, "Oh God, what did you do? Did you crash the car? Forget our anniversary? Buy Bitcoin again?" "Nothing," I said, pulling out her chair like a gentleman from one of those period dramas she makes me watch. "I just thought we could have dinner and actually talk about the job offer. Really talk about it, I mean. Go through the details." She sat down with all the enthusiasm of someone sitting in a dentist's waiting room, but she sat down, which I counted as a win. Small victories, people. I poured the pine tree wine, served up the overpriced noodles, and launched into my pitch. And let me tell you, I came prepared. I had facts. I had figures. I had spreadsheets pulled up on my phone like I was presenting to the board of directors. Okay, so here's the thing. I started, trying to sound casual and not like I'd rehearsed this in the car for 20 minutes. Houses in Millbrook are literally 1/5 the price of what we'd pay here. 1/5, Claire. We could own a 4-bedroom house with an actual yard for what we're currently paying in rent for this shoebox. She twirled her pad Thai around her fork, not making eye contact. Marcus, I don't care about square footage. Right, but think about it. We could have space, room to breathe, a home office for me that isn't our bedroom closet, maybe even a guest room for when people visit. What people? She shot back. Everyone we know lives here. I took a sip of the terrible wine and regrouped. Okay, fine. Forget the house. Let's talk about money. With my new salary, we'd be making more than double what we make now. We could actually save, invest, travel, do all those things you're always pinning on Pinterest. That got a reaction, at least. She looked up from her food. Travel where? Marcus, nobody travels to small towns. People travel away from small towns. That's the whole point of small towns. They're the places you escape from. We could travel anywhere, I said, trying not to sound desperate even though I definitely was. Bali, Europe, Japan, whatever you want. With that kind of money, we'd actually have disposable income instead of living paycheck to paycheck and pretending we're not stressed about it. She set down her fork with a sigh that could have deflated a bouncy castle. And what am I supposed to do in a town of 30,000 people while you're at work? Join a book club? Learn to can vegetables? Start a mommy blog? You could do literally anything you want, I said, and I meant it. You could start that photography business you're always talking about. Or open an online boutique. Or just, I don't know, enjoy not having to hustle for overpriced yoga classes and bottomless brunches every weekend. Wrong thing to say? I knew it the second the words left my mouth. Her eyes went narrow. That look that every married man knows means you just stepped on a landmine, and now you're about to hear about it for the next 45 minutes. Excuse me? My yoga classes are important to me. They're self-care. But I wouldn't expect you to understand that, would I? You probably think self-care is sitting in your gaming chair eating chips. That's not what I... And those brunches? Those are networking, Marcus. They're social connections. They're how I maintain relationships in a city where everyone is busy and overworked. But sure, let's move to a place where the biggest social event is probably a church potluck or a high school football game. I should have stopped there. Should have just eaten my expensive noodles and accepted defeat. But I didn't, because apparently I enjoy pain. Claire, houses there are 1/5 the price. 1/5. Do you understand how much money that would free up for us? She rolled her eyes so hard I'm surprised they didn't fall out of her head. What am I supposed to do in a town of 30,000? Knit sweaters for cows. And there it was. The exact moment I realized this conversation was going absolutely nowhere. She wasn't even trying to understand. She'd already made up her mind, probably the second I mentioned the word small town, and now she was just humoring me while thinking of increasingly sarcastic responses. But wait, it gets better. Because right then, her phone buzzed, and then it buzzed again, and suddenly we weren't having a private discussion about our future. We were having a group chat about my inadequacy as a husband. She picked up her phone, and I watched her face light up in that way it never lights up when she's talking to me anymore. Oh, it's Naomi and Kelsey. They want a video chat about tomorrow's brunch plans. Do you mind? I did mind. I minded a lot. But before I could say anything, she'd already answered, and suddenly our intimate dinner for two had become a three-way call with her friends who I'm pretty sure think I'm about as interesting as drywall. Hey girls, Claire said, her voice jumping up about 3 octaves into that fake cheerful tone women use when they're on the phone with their friends. You're not going to believe what Marcus is trying to convince me to do. Oh no. Oh hell no. I knew where this was going. Naomi's face appeared on the screen first, all perfect makeup and ring light, probably calling from her apartment that her parents paid for. What? Tell us everything. He got a job offer in some tiny town in the middle of nowhere and thinks I should just pack up and move there with him. Kelsey popped into the frame, wearing what looked like a face mask made of avocado or clay or liquidized money. Wait, what? Claire, you? In a small town? And then they started laughing. Not polite chuckles. Full-on cackling like I'd just told the funniest joke of the century. Naomi was literally wiping tears from her eyes. Oh my God, Claire, you in a small town? You'd die. You'd literally die of boredom in a week. Right, Claire said, gesturing at the phone like I wasn't sitting right there, like I was invisible. That's what I said. What would I even do there? Take up quilting. Start a Facebook page for local garage sales, Kelsey added, and they all dissolved into laughter again. I sat there eating my pad thai, watching my wife and her friends roast the biggest opportunity of my career like it was amateur hour at a comedy club. I wanted to say something. I wanted to grab that phone and tell them about the $600,000 salary, about the stock options, about how I'd be running an entire division and they were treating it like I'd been offered a job at a gas station in rural Nebraska. Instead, I took a sip of the awful wine and muttered under my breath, "Guess I'll just die with my $600,000 paycheck then." Nobody heard me. Or if they did, they ignored me, which honestly amounts to the same thing. They just kept talking, kept laughing, kept planning their Sunday brunch like my entire career advancement was nothing more than entertainment for their group chat. Claire finally hung up 20 minutes later, after they'd thoroughly dissected every reason why moving to a small town would be social suicide. She looked at me with this expression that was half pity, half annoyance, like I was a kid who'd just asked if Santa was real, and she had to gently let me down. "You see," she said, "even my friends think it's crazy." I cleared the plates, dumped the leftovers in containers, and went to the bedroom without another word. Because here's what I learned that night. You can't reason with someone who's already decided you're wrong. You can't present facts to someone who's operating purely on feelings and the opinions of people who think a difficult decision is choosing between a latte and a cappuccino. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to Claire laugh on the phone in the living room about something else I wasn't part of, and I thought about that house in Millbrook I'd found online. 4 bedrooms, 2-car garage, a yard big enough to actually do something with, all for less than what we were paying annually in rent for our glorified closet. And I thought, maybe being shut down, shot down, and laughed down was exactly the permission I needed to stop asking and start doing. Guess I'd find out soon enough. So here's something they don't tell you about marriage. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stop talking and start planning. I know, that sounds like terrible advice. Every relationship expert would probably have a stroke reading that sentence. Communication is supposed to be the foundation of a strong partnership, right? You're supposed to share everything, be transparent, operate as a united front against the world. But you know what else they don't tell you? Sometimes your partner makes it crystal clear they don't actually want to be a partner. And at that point, communication is just banging your head against a wall while they live stream it for their friends' entertainment. After that disastrous dinner with Claire and her Greek chorus of enablers, I made a decision. Not a rash decision, not an angry decision, a calculated one. The kind of decision you make at 3 in the morning when you can't sleep because your brain won't shut up about mortgage rates and cost of living comparisons. I was taking the job. I was moving to Millbrook. And Claire could either come with me or she couldn't. But I was done trying to convince someone who'd already made up their mind that I was the villain in her story. The weird part, once I decided, everything got easier. It was like I'd been carrying around this weight of trying to make her happy, trying to fit into her version of what our life should look like. And suddenly, I just set it down, put it on the ground, walked away from it. And let me tell you, my back felt better immediately. But I'm not an idiot. I knew that if I told Claire I'd accepted the job, she'd make the next 3 weeks of my life a living hell. There would be crying, screaming. Probably her mother would get involved. And Margaret is a sweet lady, but she has opinions about everything and shares them with the enthusiasm of a cable news anchor. Claire would post cryptic Instagram stories about betrayal and toxic masculinity. Her friends would blow up my phone. It would be a whole dramatic production, and I didn't have the energy for it. Not when I had a massive career transition to plan. So I became a secret agent. Okay, not really. But I did start living a double life that would have made James Bond proud. If James Bond's mission was researching real estate instead of saving the world from supervillains. During the day, I went to work like normal. Attended meetings. Wrote code. Pretended to care about Dave from accounting's fantasy football league. At lunch, while everyone else was scrolling Twitter or watching YouTube videos of cats doing stupid things, I was on Zillow. Oh my God. You guys, Zillow became my new addiction. Forget Netflix. Forget video games. I was mainlining real estate listings like they were premium content. And the houses. I'm talking about actual, real, legitimate houses that human beings could live in comfortably, with yards and garages and rooms that had purposes other than storage for Claire's shoes she wore once. Houses with porches, with basements, with driveways that could fit 2 cars without playing Tetris. Houses that cost less than our annual rent. It was like discovering that everything I thought I knew about money was a lie constructed by coastal city real estate developers to keep people poor and miserable. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, updated kitchen, 2-car garage, $285,000. For bedrooms, finished basement, half-acre lot, $340,000. A literal Victorian house with original hardwood floors and a wraparound porch for $125,000. I could buy any of these places and still have money left over for furniture that wasn't from IKEA and didn't require an engineering degree to assemble. I saved approximately 73 listings. Then I narrowed it down to 15. Then 5. I had a spreadsheet. I rated them by location, condition, resale value, and proximity to my new office. I took virtual tours during my lunch break, sitting in my car in the parking lot, wearing headphones so my coworkers wouldn't hear the real estate agent's voice describing the charming breakfast nook and spacious master suite. At home, it was like I was living in a sitcom where the husband has a secret identity. Claire would be on the couch scrolling Instagram, complaining about how Jessica from her Pilates class was such a show-off for posting about her engagement ring, and I'd be sitting 3 feet away looking at mortgage calculators on my phone. She thought I was checking work emails. I was actually determining whether I should go with a 15-year or 30-year mortgage term. "Marcus, are you even listening to me?" she'd ask. "Yeah, totally. Jessica's ring is too big and compensating for something." I'd respond automatically, not looking up from my phone where I was reading about property taxes and school district ratings for a town I supposedly wasn't moving to. "You've been weird lately," she said one night, narrowing her eyes at me in that suspicious way that meant she was about to start an argument. "Just work stress," I lied smoothly. "Big project coming up. Lots on my mind." Translation: I'm orchestrating my exit from this relationship and you have no idea, but sure, let's call it work stress. The really fun part was opening a new bank account. I went to a different branch of our bank. Couldn't risk running into Claire or, God forbid, one of her friends who would immediately text her like Paul Revere warning about the British. I sat down with a banker named Todd, who had that eager look that young guys in finance get when they think they're about to make someone's day. "So what brings you in today, Mr. Hale?" Todd asked, fingers poised over his keyboard. "I need to open a new checking account," I said, "separate from my joint account." Todd's fingers paused. His smile flickered. You could see the mental calculation happening behind his eyes. Divorce, affair, or midlife crisis. "Place your bets, folks." "Absolutely. We can do that," he said carefully. "Any particular reason for the separate account?" "Relocation bonus from work," I explained. "Big deposit coming in. Want to keep it separate for organization purposes." His smile came back full force. "Not a divorce. Not an affair. Just a responsible adult managing a windfall." Todd loved this story. He probably tells it at parties. The relocation bonus hit my new account 3 days later. $25,000. Just sitting there, waiting to be used for things like security deposits and moving trucks and starting my new life. I checked the balance approximately 800 times a day just to make sure it was real, that this wasn't some elaborate prank where Leonard would jump out and yell, "Gotcha!" and I'd be stuck in my current life forever like some Greek mythology punishment. At the office, Leonard had become my unexpected ally in this whole operation. He'd slap me on the back in meetings, grinning like a proud dad. "Marcus, my star player, you ready to change the game up in Millbrook?" "Absolutely," I'd say, matching his energy, while Claire thought I was still thinking about it. One afternoon, Leonard pulled me aside after a meeting. "Hey, listen, I know this is a big move. How's the wife handling it?" I could have been honest. Could have told him that my wife had laughed in my face and was currently pretending this job didn't exist. Instead, I smiled and said, "She's adjusting to the idea. You know how it is." "Oh yeah, my wife was the same way when we moved from Chicago to here," Leonard said, nodding sagely. "Women hate change. But once they see the house, the lifestyle, the financial security, they come around. Trust me." I didn't have the heart to tell him that Claire wasn't coming around to anything. She wasn't even in the same area code as around. She was in a completely different state called delusion, where she thought she could just veto major life decisions, and I'd fall in line like a good little husband who was grateful to live in an overpriced apartment forever. At home, when Claire asked why I was so quiet lately, I'd just shrug and say, "Work stuff. Don't want to bore you with it." What I really meant was, "I'm planning my escape from this marriage, and you're making it really, really easy." The nights were the hardest part. Claire would fall asleep around 11, scrolling through TikTok until her phone literally fell on her face, and I'd lie there in the dark doing mental math. Moving truck rental, $800. First month's rent on a temporary place, $1,200. Breaking our current lease, probably 2 months rent penalty. New furniture for a bigger place, maybe $5,000 if I was smart about it. It all added up, but it was doable. More than doable. It was happening. I'd found a rental house in Millbrook online. A 3-bedroom place with a yard and a garage, going for $1,400 a month, which was less than half what we paid for our apartment. The landlord seemed cool, ran a background check, and approved my application within 48 hours. I signed a lease electronically during my lunch break, sitting in a Chipotle parking lot, eating a burrito with one hand and digitally signing my new future with the other. Very dignified. Very adult. Very. I'm making the biggest decision of my life, while sour cream drips on my shirt. The timeline was set. Leonard wanted me in Millbrook in 3 weeks. 3 weeks to pack up my entire life, or at least the parts of it I actually wanted to keep. 3 weeks to mentally prepare for the conversation that would inevitably blow up my marriage. 3 weeks to keep living this double life where I smiled and nodded at Claire's stories about brunch drama while internally planning my exit strategy. I'd become a spy in my own home, and honestly, it was the most in control I'd felt in years. Claire thought she'd shut me down, shot me down, laughed me down. What she didn't realize was that she'd actually set me free. She just wouldn't figure it out until the moving truck showed up. And sitting there in bed at night, listening to her breathe, I'd think about that house with the porch and the yard and the garage, and I'd smile in the dark. Just 3 more weeks. 3 more weeks of pretending everything was fine while I systematically dismantled our life together and rebuilt it into something better. You know what they say, the best revenge is living well. I was about to live extremely well. In a boring small town. With my massive paycheck and my yard and my peace of mind. Claire had made her choice. I just made mine. The difference was, I was actually doing something about it. You know that feeling when you're about to jump off a high dive and your brain is screaming at you to climb back down, but your body just keeps moving forward anyway? That was me on Sunday morning, 3 weeks after I'd accepted the job that Claire didn't know I'd accepted, standing in our kitchen making pancakes like a condemned man ordering his last meal. Except instead of being executed, I was about to execute our marriage. Potato, potato. I'd picked Sunday morning specifically because Claire was always in a good mood on Sundays. Or at least, she was in as good a mood as Claire got, which meant she wasn't actively complaining about something. She'd sleep in until 10, shuffle out in her overpriced pajamas that cost more than my first car, drink her fancy coffee that tasted like burnt dreams, and scroll through Instagram stories of people having better lives than her. It was her routine, her safe space, which made it the perfect time to absolutely destroy her day. The movers were coming Monday morning. Tomorrow. I'd scheduled them 2 weeks ago, confirmed yesterday, and paid the deposit from my secret bank account like some kind of financial ninja. Everything was arranged. The rental house in Millbrook was ready. My new office had already sent me a welcome packet with a parking pass and an ID badge that had my fancy new title printed on it. Division Head, Regional Operations. I'd stared at that badge for like 20 minutes when it arrived, just holding it, feeling the weight of it, thinking about how this was actually real and actually happening, and there was no turning back now. But first, I had to tell my wife. My partner. The woman I'd been married to for 6 years who currently had no idea that moving trucks would be arriving at our apartment building in approximately 24 hours. I flipped another pancake, watching it brown perfectly, and thought about how I'd rehearsed this conversation approximately 9,000 times in my head. I tried different approaches. The gentle approach. Claire, honey, we need to talk about something important. The firm approach. I've made a decision about my career. The rip the Band-Aid off approach. I'm moving to Millbrook and you need to decide if you're coming with me. None of them felt right, because there was no right way to tell someone you'd planned your entire future without them. Claire emerged from the bedroom at 10:17, right on schedule, wearing those silk pajamas that cost $200 and made her look like she was auditioning for a restoration hardware catalog. Her hair was in that messy bun that somehow looked intentional, and she was already on her phone, probably checking to see what Naomi and Kelsey were doing later. Morning, she mumbled, not looking up. Morning, I said, sliding a perfect pancake onto a plate. Made your favorite. Blueberry. That got her attention. She looked up with suspicious eyes because I hadn't made breakfast in probably 6 months. And when you've been married for 6 years, sudden gestures of affection are usually code for, I did something wrong, and I'm trying to soften the blow. What's the occasion? She asked, sitting down at our tiny table that was barely big enough for 2 plates. No occasion, I lied, pouring her coffee. Just felt like cooking. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Well, she ate while scrolling through her phone, and I ate while having a complete mental breakdown behind my calm exterior. This was it. This was the moment. After this conversation, everything would change. Our marriage would either survive or it wouldn't. And based on the past 3 weeks of watching her dismiss every attempt I'd made to discuss this rationally, I had a pretty good idea which way it would go. I set down my fork. Claire, I need to tell you something. She didn't look up. I accepted the job. What job? Still scrolling. The Millbrook job. The promotion. The one we talked about 3 weeks ago. Now she looked up. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, annoyance, anger, and finally landing on this weird mixture of shock and fury that I'd never quite seen before. It was like watching a computer crash in real time. You what? I accepted it. The movers come tomorrow morning at 8. She set her phone down slowly, carefully, like she was handling explosives. You're joking. I'm not joking. Marcus. She said my name like a kindergarten teacher addressing a student who just ate paste. We talked about this. I said no. You said you wouldn't move. I said I understood. I never said I wasn't taking the job. Her jaw actually dropped. Like, physically dropped open in that way you see in movies, but never think happens in real life. Are you insane? You can't make a decision like this without me. I tried to make it with you, I said, keeping my voice level even though my heart was doing Olympic gymnastics in my chest. I tried to discuss it. Multiple times. You shut me down every time. You and your friends literally laughed at me. Because it's ridiculous. Moving to a small town is ridiculous. No, Claire. What's ridiculous is staying in a city where we can barely afford rent while turning down a $600,000 salary because you don't want to leave your brunch spots. I watched that number hit her like a physical object. Her eyes went wide. Wait, 600,000. Base salary, plus bonuses, plus stock options, plus the relocation package. Yeah, she opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She looked like a fish that had just realized it was out of water. You never said it was that much. I did actually. Multiple times. You weren't listening. I was listening. You said it was a promotion. You never said it was that's. She was actually speechless, which might have been a first in our entire relationship. That's a lot of money, Marcus. Yeah, it is. Which is why I accepted it. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor with that horrible screeching sound that makes your teeth hurt. If you leave, we're over. You understand that? If you walk out that door and move to that stupid town, this marriage is done. There it was. The ultimatum. The nuclear option. The thing I'd known was coming but still kind of hoped wouldn't happen because, despite everything, some tiny optimistic part of me still thought maybe she'd surprise me. I stood up too, slowly, calmly, like I was trying not to spook a wild animal. No, Claire. You're choosing your lifestyle over us. I'm just respecting your choice. That's bullshit and you know it. You're the one leaving. I'm leaving for an incredible opportunity that would change our lives for the better. You're refusing to even consider it because you can't imagine life without your yoga studio and your friend group and your Sunday brunches. So yeah, I'm leaving. But you're the one who decided we weren't worth the inconvenience. She stared at me like I'd just spoken ancient Greek. Like the concept that she might be part of the problem was so foreign it didn't compute. You're choosing a job over me. I'm choosing our future over your comfort zone. There's a difference. Oh my God. She grabbed her phone, and I knew exactly what was about to happen. Instagram. The nuclear option of modern relationships. When verbal arguments fail, take it digital. You're insane. You're actually insane. I'm posting about this. Everyone needs to know about toxic husbands who don't value women. Go ahead, I said, starting to clear the breakfast dishes because if I was going to have my marriage implode, I might as well have a clean kitchen. Tell everyone about your toxic husband who tried to give you a better life, and you said no. She was already typing, her thumbs moving at light speed across her phone screen. I could practically see the post forming. Some vague posting about betrayal and gaslighting, and probably something about how men only care about money. Her friends would flood the comments with support. Naomi would probably write a paragraph about how she saw this coming. Kelsey would post a string of angry emojis. They'd all validate each other's belief that I was the villain, while completely ignoring that Claire had been given every opportunity to be part of this decision and chose not to be. I washed the dishes. She typed furiously. This was our marriage now. Me cleaning up messes while she crafted a narrative for social media consumption. I'm staying with Naomi, she announced, grabbing her purse. I can't even look at you right now. Okay, that's it. Just okay. What do you want me to say, Claire? You've made your position clear. Multiple times. I'm moving to Millbrook tomorrow. You're welcome to come with me, or you're welcome to stay here. But I'm done trying to convince you. She stood there in the doorway of our apartment, and for a second, just a second, I saw something flicker across her face that might have been doubt. Might have been the realization that this was actually happening, and maybe she'd miscalculated. But then it was gone, replaced by that stubborn set to her jaw that I knew so well. Fine. Go to your boring town. Live your boring life. See if I care. She slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. I heard her footsteps stomping down the hallway, heard the elevator ding, heard the silence that followed. And then I just stood there in our apartment, my apartment, now, I guess, surrounded by the life we'd built together, and I started labeling boxes. Living room, kitchen, bedroom, office. I grabbed the label maker I'd bought specifically for this, and I made one more label, just for myself. Freedom. My phone buzzed. A text from Leonard. Excited for tomorrow. Your team can't wait to meet you. Another buzz. This one from Claire. I hope you're happy. You just destroyed our marriage for a paycheck. I looked at both messages, and I realized something. Only one of these people understood what this move actually meant. Only one of these people saw it as an opportunity instead of a threat. And only one of these people was going to be part of my future. I typed back to Leonard. Can't wait. See you Monday. I didn't respond to Claire. Instead, I opened the label maker again and made one more label, sticking it on the box that held all our wedding photos and shared memories. Optional baggage. The movers would ask me tomorrow if I wanted to bring it. I hadn't decided yet, but I had about 24 hours to figure out how much of my past I wanted dragging into my future, and honestly, the answer was looking like not much. I packed until midnight, ordered pizza because cooking for one felt too sad, and fell asleep on our couch because the bedroom felt too empty and too full at the same time. Tomorrow morning, the movers would show up. Tomorrow, my new life would start. Tomorrow, I'd find out if making the biggest decision of my life without my wife made me brave or just broken. But tonight I was just a guy with a label maker, a stack of boxes, and the growing certainty that sometimes the hardest part of moving forward is admitting you've been standing still for way too long. Moving day arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train, which was fitting because I felt like I'd been hit by one. I'd slept maybe 3 hours on the couch, kept waking up thinking I heard Claire's key in the lock, but it was just the neighbor's cat or the building settling or my guilty conscience trying to convince me I'd made a terrible mistake. Spoiler alert, I hadn't. But at 4 in the morning, when you're lying on a couch surrounded by boxes and your marriage is imploding, your brain likes to play this fun game called second-guess literally everything you've ever decided. The movers showed up at 8 a.m. sharp, which was either professionalism or divine timing, because I needed to get out of that apartment before I started having feelings about it. 3 guys named Mike, Carlos, and another Mike. Apparently moving companies only hire people named Mike. Descended on my life with the efficiency of a military operation. They had the whole place packed into their truck in 4 hours, which really puts into perspective how little stuff you actually need when you strip away all the decorative nonsense that women insist makes a house a home. This everything, boss? Mike 1 asked, consulting his clipboard. I looked around the empty apartment, at the nail holes in the walls where pictures used to hang, at the dust outlines on the floor where furniture used to sit, at the space that had contained 6 years of marriage and now contained nothing but echoes and regret. Yeah, I said. That's everything that matters. They left. I did one final walkthrough, mostly out of obligation and partly because I'm not a monster who leaves a mess for the landlord. I found one of Claire's earrings under the radiator. Expensive, probably, knowing her taste, and I left it on the kitchen counter. Not out of spite, not out of symbolism. Just because it wasn't mine and I was done carrying things that didn't belong to me. I locked the door for the last time, dropped the keys in the landlord's mailbox, and walked to my car with the strangest feeling washing over me. It wasn't sadness exactly. It wasn't relief either. It was more like emptiness. No, that's not right. It was like someone had been playing music at full volume for 6 years and suddenly turned it off. And now I could hear myself think for the first time and wasn't quite sure what my thoughts sounded like anymore. My car was packed with the essentials: laptop, clothes, toiletries, and that one coffee maker that was definitely mine because I'd bought it before the marriage, and I'd be damned if Claire tried to claim it in some future divorce proceeding. Everything else was in the truck, headed to Millbrook, headed to my new life, headed to a place where nobody knew I was the guy who'd just blown up his marriage for a career opportunity. I programmed the GPS, 3 hours and 47 minutes to Millbrook, and pulled out of the parking garage one last time. The city stretched out around me in all its concrete glory. Too many people, too much traffic, too much noise, too much everything. I'd lived here for 8 years. Met Claire here. Got married here. Built a life here that apparently wasn't actually the life I wanted. The drive started the way all city exits start. Gridlock traffic, aggressive lane changes, someone honking because apparently waiting 3 seconds at a green light is equivalent to a war crime. But then, slowly, gradually, the buildings got shorter. The traffic got lighter. The aggressive honking turned into regular honking, then occasional honking, then no honking at all. Trees started appearing between structures. Then trees appeared without structures. Then it was just trees and open road and sky that went on forever. I rolled down my windows somewhere around the 2-hour mark, and the first breath of non-city air hit me like a religious experience. It didn't smell like exhaust fumes. It didn't smell like garbage and hot dog carts and that weird subway smell that's probably just condensed human misery. It smelled like nothing, or everything, or just air that hadn't been filtered through 8 million people's lungs first. Freedom. That's what it smelled like. Freedom, or maybe just fresh air without exhaust fumes, but I was calling it freedom because I was feeling poetic and slightly unhinged from lack of sleep. I turned up the radio, some classic rock station playing songs about leaving town and finding yourself and other cliches that suddenly felt extremely relevant, and I started laughing. Not a crazy laugh, not a sad laugh, just a laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep in my chest because holy hell, I'd actually done it. I'd actually left. I'd made a decision and followed through with it instead of just complaining about it or waiting for someone else's permission. Claire was probably at Naomi's apartment right now, telling the story of her terrible husband who abandoned her for a job in the middle of nowhere. Her phone was probably lighting up with supportive messages from friends who'd never liked me anyway. She was probably already planning her hot girl summer, or whatever people call it when they're pretending to be fine after a breakup. And you know what? Good for her. Genuinely. If she wanted to stay in the city and live that life, she should live that life. Just not with me subsidizing it. The GPS announced I was entering Millbrook with all the enthusiasm of a robot who'd seen too many small towns, and suddenly I was driving down Main Street. An actual Main Street, like something out of a movie, with storefronts and a coffee shop, and people walking their dogs, and a hardware store that definitely wasn't a Home Depot. It looked fake. It looked staged. It looked like someone had built a town specifically to make city people feel like they'd time-traveled to an era when life was simpler. Except it wasn't fake. This was real. People actually lived here. They walked to get coffee instead of fighting for parking spaces. They knew their neighbors' names. They probably did weird small-town things like go to high school football games and church potlucks and town hall meetings where they argued about whether to put in a new traffic light. My rental house was on Oak Street. Because of course it was Oak Street, because small towns have street names like Oak and Maple and Elm instead of numbered streets and compass directions. I pulled into the driveway, my driveway, a concept that still felt foreign, and just sat there for a minute, staring at this 3-bedroom house with actual square footage and a yard and a garage. The movers pulled up 20 minutes later. Mike one hopped out, consulted his clipboard, and gave me a thumbs up. Nice place, boss. Way better than most of the city apartments we service. Yeah, I said, unlocking the front door and stepping into my new empty house that smelled like paint and possibility. It really is. They unloaded everything in 2 hours. I tipped them generously because they'd witnessed my entire life transition and hadn't asked uncomfortable questions about why there was only one person receiving this delivery. They drove away, and I stood in my new living room surrounded by boxes labeled in my handwriting. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years: excitement. Not anxiety disguised as excitement. Not nervous energy masquerading as anticipation. Just pure, uncomplicated excitement about what came next. I spent the rest of the day unpacking essentials: bed frame, mattress, coffee maker, laptop, enough clothes to survive the week. Everything else could wait. I ordered pizza from a local place, Mario's, which had a 4.7-star rating and photos that looked like actual pizza instead of the artisanal nonsense the city places tried to pass off as food, and ate it sitting on my porch. Watching the sun set over actual trees instead of buildings. My phone buzzed. A text from Leonard. "You make it in okay? Office ready for you tomorrow at 9. I typed back. "Made it. Ready to start." Another buzz. This one from an unknown number. But I knew it was Claire, because who else would text me from a different phone? "I can't believe you actually went through with this. You've changed." I looked at that message for a long time. I could respond. I could explain, again, why I'd made this choice. I could try to make her understand that change isn't always bad, that growth sometimes looks like leaving, that choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. But I'd spent 3 weeks trying to make her understand, and she'd spent 3 weeks refusing to listen. So I deleted the message without responding and blocked the number. Then I opened my work email and started reviewing the files Leonard had sent over. Project plans, team rosters, budget reports, all the boring administrative stuff that apparently came with being division head, which was a title that still felt surreal every time I saw it in writing. At 11 p.m., I made the bed, climbed in, and stared at the ceiling of my new bedroom in my new house in my new town, where I was about to start my new job with my new title and my new salary. Everything was new. Everything was different. Everything was terrifying and exhilarating and exactly what I needed. I fell asleep within minutes. No city noise, no sirens, no neighbors fighting through thin walls, and I dreamed about absolutely nothing, which was the best dream I'd had in years. The next morning, I woke up at 6:30 without an alarm, made coffee in my kitchen that had actual counter space, and got dressed in one of my good suits. I drove to the office, a 15-minute commute instead of 45, and pulled into a parking spot with my name on it. My name, on a parking spot. Division Head Marcus Hale. The building was sleek and modern, way nicer than I'd expected for a small-town office. The lobby had that new building smell, all glass and steel and possibility. The receptionist smiled at me like she actually meant it instead of the dead-eyed customer service smile city people perfected. "You must be Mr. Hale. Welcome. Mr. Leonard is waiting for you upstairs." I took the elevator to the 3rd floor, and when the doors opened, there was Leonard with about 50 people behind him, all holding coffee cups and wearing genuine smiles. Not forced meeting smiles. Real ones. "Marcus," Leonard boomed, pulling me into a handshake that turned into a back slap. "Welcome to the team. Everyone, this is our new division head, the guy who's going to take us to the next level." They applauded. Actually applauded. When was the last time anyone had applauded me for just showing up to work? Never. That's when. Because in the city, showing up was the bare minimum, and everyone was too busy pretending to be important to celebrate other people's achievements. My office was corner suite with windows overlooking actual scenery instead of other buildings. My desk was bigger than my old apartment's living room. There was a coffee maker, a mini fridge, and a couch for those long days when you needed to think horizontally. "So," Leonard said, standing in the doorway with a grin. "Still think this was a mistake?" I looked out the window at Millbrook stretching out below me, at the trees and the sky and the life I was about to build, and I laughed. Not even a little bit. Claire had once said, "That job will ruin your life." Sitting in my new office with my new title and my new beginning, I couldn't stop grinning. Turned out, she was right. It had ruined my old life. Thank God. 3 months into my new life in Millbrook, and I'd almost forgotten what stress felt like. Almost. I'd settled into a routine that would have made my city self weep with envy. Wake up at 7 without an alarm, because apparently your body just does that when you're not exhausted all the time. Make coffee in a kitchen where I could actually move around without bumping into things. Drive 15 minutes to work while listening to podcasts instead of sitting in gridlock traffic contemplating mortality. At the office, I had a team that actually respected me, projects that challenged me without destroying me, and a salary that made my bank account look like I'd won a small lottery every 2 weeks. Life was good. Life was peaceful. Life was everything I'd hoped it would be when I made that insane decision to blow up my marriage and move to a town where the biggest drama was apparently whether the new Italian restaurant downtown was authentic or just Olive Garden with delusions of grandeur. I'd even started going to the gym, a real gym with equipment that worked, not an overpriced boutique fitness studio where people paid $50 to do squats in designer leggings while an instructor yelled motivational nonsense at them. I should have known it was too good to last. The messages started on a Tuesday, which feels appropriate somehow, because Tuesdays are when bad things happen that you're not expecting. Mondays, you're braced for disaster. Fridays, you're too close to the weekend to care. But Tuesdays? Tuesdays are when life sneaks up behind you and reminds you that just because you moved 3 hours away doesn't mean your past got the memo. I was at my desk, reviewing quarterly projections and feeling pretty damn good about how my division was performing, when my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't have saved but definitely recognized. Kelsey, Claire's friend, the one who'd laughed at me through a phone screen about moving to a small town. Hey Marcus, Claire says you moved. Everything okay? I stared at that message for a solid minute. Everything okay? Was she serious? I'd spent 3 weeks trying to have a rational conversation with Claire about the biggest career opportunity of my life, got laughed at by her and her friends, made a decision, followed through with it, and now, 3 months later, one of said friends was sliding into my texts asking if everything was okay like I'd just gone out for cigarettes and forgot to come back. Delete. I hit delete so fast I almost threw my phone across the room. Nope. Not today, Satan. Not engaging with that energy. But here's the thing about opening doors. Once you crack one open, others follow. 2 days later, another message. This time from Naomi, the ringleader of Claire's friend group, the one who probably organized the intervention-style video call during our disastrous dinner. Hey, she's struggling. Maybe talk to her. Oh, she's struggling? That's fascinating, Naomi. Really fascinating. I'm so glad you reached out to inform me that my ex-wife, who laughed at my career advancement and gave me an ultimatum instead of having an adult conversation, is now struggling with the consequences of her own choices. Let me just drop everything and fix that for her. Delete. Gone. Blocked. I was getting good at this. But the messages kept coming, like whack-a-mole, except the moles were Claire's enablers, and the hammer was my rapidly diminishing patience. Her yoga instructor, a woman I'd met exactly twice, sent me a DM on Instagram. Hey Marcus, miss seeing you in class. Claire seems really down lately. Hope you guys work things out. Block. I never even went to her yoga classes. That was all Claire. But apparently in Claire's version of events, I was the bad guy who abandoned not just her, but her entire social ecosystem. Then came the one that actually made me pause. Margaret, Claire's mom. Sweet Margaret, who'd always been kind to me, who made the best lasagna I'd ever eaten, who'd actually seemed to like me despite her daughter's increasingly obvious dissatisfaction with our marriage. Margaret, who probably didn't know the whole story and definitely didn't deserve to get caught in the middle of this mess. Marcus, honey, Claire says you threw away your marriage for a lateral move. That doesn't sound like you. Can we talk? A lateral move. A lateral move. I sat there in my corner office with my division head nameplate and my view of actual trees and my salary that had literally doubled, and I had to read that sentence 3 times before my brain processed it. Claire had told her mother, her own mother, that I'd sacrificed our marriage for a lateral move. Not a massive promotion. Not a life-changing opportunity. A lateral move. Like I just switched cubicles in the same building and decided to burn my marriage down for the aesthetic. This time, I didn't delete. This time, I responded, because Margaret deserved better than Claire's version of reality. Hi, Margaret. I appreciate you reaching out. For clarity, it wasn't a lateral move. I was promoted to division head with a significant salary increase and relocation package. I discussed this with Claire multiple times over 3 weeks. She refused to even consider moving and gave me an ultimatum. Stay or we're over. I chose my career. I'm sorry she's hurting, but I'm not sorry for the decision. I hope you're doing well. I kept it polite, factual, non-emotional. The kind of message you send when you want to set the record straight without burning bridges with someone who'd always been decent to you. Then I added one more line, because apparently I was feeling petty. She didn't mention the promotion was for $600,000, did she? Weird. Send. Done. Back to work. Margaret didn't respond immediately, which was fine because I had actual work to do. Important work. The kind of work that justified my ridiculous salary and fancy title. But I couldn't quite shake the feeling that something had shifted. The silence I'd enjoyed for 3 months, the blissful radio silence from my old life, was cracking. The ghosts were starting to seep through. That evening, I got home to my rental house, which I was already planning to buy because the landlord had mentioned he might sell, and I'd done the math, and it made perfect sense, and found myself doing something I hadn't done in months. I looked at Claire's Instagram. I know. It's like looking at your ex's social media is the digital equivalent of drunk texting. Except you're sober, and you know it's a bad idea, but you do it anyway, because apparently self-preservation isn't one of your strengths. But I had to know what she'd been posting, what narrative she'd been spinning, what version of our divorce, because let's be honest, that's where this was headed. She'd presented to the world. Her latest post was from 2 weeks ago, a photo of her at some rooftop bar with Naomi and Kelsey, all three of them holding cocktails and wearing outfits that probably cost more than my car payment. The caption read, "Surrounding yourself with strong women who remind you of your worth when men try to diminish it. Flexed biceps sparkles hashtag self-love hashtag know your worth hashtag toxic masculinity." The comments were exactly what you'd expect. A Greek chorus of support from people who knew absolutely nothing about our situation, but were more than happy to validate Claire's victim narrative. You're better off without him. His lost queen. Men are trash. The usual suspects, saying the usual things, supporting the usual story about the usual villain. Except I wasn't the villain. I was just a guy who'd chosen his career over his wife's comfort zone. And apparently that made me public enemy number one in the court of Instagram justice. I closed the app, threw my phone on the couch, and made myself dinner. A real dinner, with actual cooking, in a kitchen that had space for it. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, rice. The kind of meal that takes effort but feels good because you made it yourself and it tastes better than anything you can get delivered in a soggy container. While I ate, I thought about those messages. Kelsey's casual check-in, like 3 months of silence, was totally normal. Naomi's guilt trip about Claire struggling. Margaret's concern about a lateral move that was actually the opportunity of a lifetime. They were all coming from the same place. Claire's narrative. Claire's version of events. Claire's reality distortion field. And here's what really got me. Not one of them had asked me what actually happened. Not one of them had said, "Hey Marcus, we heard one side of this story. Want to share yours?" They'd all just accepted Claire's version as gospel truth and reached out to either check on me, guilt me, or inform me that I'd made a mistake. The nerve. The absolute audacity. My phone buzzed again. This time, an email. From Margaret. My heart did a weird flip because Margaret was genuinely nice and I didn't want her caught in the middle of this disaster. The subject line read, "I had no idea." I opened it, half expecting another guilt trip, another attempt to get me to work things out with Claire, another reminder that marriage is about compromise and communication and all those things that sound great until you realize you're the only one doing either. But that's not what the email said. "Marcus, I just talked to Claire. I asked her directly about your promotion. About the salary. About whether you tried to discuss it with her before making the decision. She admitted you had tried to talk to her multiple times. She admitted she refused to even consider moving. She admitted she gave you an ultimatum. I am so sorry. I raised Claire to value appearances over substance, and I'm realizing now how much damage that's done. You made the right call, son. You deserve to be with someone who sees your success as a team victory, not a threat to their lifestyle. I hope you're happy in Millbrook. You deserved better than what my daughter was willing to give you." I read that email 3 times, then a fourth, then lost count because my eyes were getting blurry and I definitely wasn't crying in my kitchen over an email from my maybe future ex-mother-in-law. Definitely not. Margaret got it. Margaret understood. Margaret had cracked through Claire's narrative and seen the truth, and somehow that validation from someone who actually knew both of us meant more than I'd expected it to. I typed back, "Thank you, Margaret. That means more than you know. I'm doing well here. Really well. I hope you're taking care of yourself. And for what it's worth, you're a wonderful person and I'm grateful I got to know you. Send." Then I poured myself a bourbon, the good stuff I could now afford because 6-figure salaries have their perks, and sat on my porch watching the sun set over my boring small town with my boring yard and my boring peaceful life. My phone stayed silent for the rest of the night. No more ghost messages. No more guilt trips. No more attempts to drag me back into Claire's drama. Just silence. Beautiful, peaceful, expensive silence. I knew this wasn't over. I knew the divorce would be messy. I knew Claire would probably try more tactics to get me to come back or feel guilty or whatever her endgame was. But sitting there on my porch with my bourbon and my peace of mind and my corner office waiting for me tomorrow, I realized something important. The ghosts could haunt my inbox all they wanted. I didn't live there anymore. I lived here, in a place where people actually respected hard work and career advancement instead of mocking it. In a house with a yard where I could think without hearing neighbors fighting through paper-thin walls. In a life I'd chosen for myself instead of one someone else had chosen for me. The messages had tried to crack my peace. They'd failed. I finished my bourbon, went inside, and slept like a baby in my big bedroom in my boring house in my apparently terrible small town. Best sleep I'd had in years. You know what's funny about social media? And by funny, I mean absolutely predictable in the worst possible way. People can't help themselves. They see something shiny, something that contradicts the narrative they've been fed, and suddenly their entire worldview shifts like a rug getting yanked out from under them. It's like watching dominoes fall, except the dominoes are made of ego and the falling is made of schadenfreude. I posted on LinkedIn. That was my big mistake, or my brilliant strategic move, depending on how you look at it. Either way, it was the match that lit the fuse that blew up whatever remained of Claire's carefully constructed victim narrative. It was a simple post, really. Professional. Classy. The kind of thing people post when they're proud of their work and want to share it with their professional network. I wasn't trying to start drama. I was just existing in my success, which apparently is controversial when your ex-wife has spent 3 months telling everyone you ruined your life for a lateral move. The post read, "Proud to announce the successful launch of Project Atlas at our new Millbrook facility. Leading this incredible team of 50-plus engineers has been the highlight of my career. Grateful for the opportunity to serve as division head and excited for what's next. Hashtag tech leadership, hashtag innovation, hashtag career growth." I attached a photo from our launch party, me standing with my team, everyone smiling, the office behind us looking like something out of a tech startup dream. All glass and modern furniture and the kind of workspace that makes you actually want to come to work. I looked happy in that photo because I was happy, genuinely, authentically happy in a way I hadn't been in years. I posted it at 9 in the morning, right after our team meeting where we'd celebrated hitting all our Q3 targets ahead of schedule. Then I went back to work because I had actual responsibilities that required my attention and forgot about it for the next few hours. By lunch, my phone was having a seizure. LinkedIn notifications were rolling in like a slot machine hitting jackpot. Likes, comments, shares, connection requests from industry people I'd only dreamed of networking with back in the city. Former coworkers were congratulating me. People from conferences I'd attended years ago were reaching out. A recruiter from Google sent me a DM asking if I'd be interested in discussing future opportunities. The comments section read like a highlight reel of professional validation. "Congratulations, Marcus. Well-deserved. Division head at your age? Impressive work. Project Atlas is getting serious buzz in the industry. Great leadership. Millbrook facility is beautiful. You guys hiring?" My former boss from the city, the one before Leonard, commented, "Always knew you'd go far, Marcus." This is just the beginning. I was reading through them during my lunch break, eating a sandwich from this local deli that made everything fresh and cost half what city food cost, when my personal email dinged. The subject line made me choke on my turkey club. "Wait, you're division head, Claire." I stared at that subject line for a solid 30 seconds. Then I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not a vindictive laugh. Just a pure, genuine laugh at the absolute absurdity of it all. 3 months. 3 entire months she'd had to process what I'd told her. 3 months she'd spent telling people I'd thrown away our marriage for a lateral move. 3 months of radio silence except for her friends' guilt-tripped texts. And now, after seeing my LinkedIn post with photo evidence and professional validation and the kind of success that you can't fake or downplay, she was reaching out with the digital equivalent of "Wait, hold up, you were serious?" I opened the email. Buckle up, folks, because it was a journey. "Marcus, I just saw your LinkedIn post. Division head? You're running Project Atlas?" I had no idea the job was this big. You never told me it was this important. We need to talk. I think I made a mistake. I've been thinking a lot about us, and I realize now that I might have been too hasty. I was scared of change, but I'm ready now. I can move to Millbrook. I can adapt. I've been doing a lot of self-reflection and growth work, and I see now that I wasn't being supportive. Can we talk? Please? I miss you. I miss us. We can work this out. I'll even learn to milk cows if I have to. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Love. Claire. I read it twice. Then a third time, looking for the punchline, the hidden camera, the part where this was all an elaborate joke. But no, this was real. This was Claire, seeing my success plastered across LinkedIn for her entire network to see, realizing she'd miscalculated badly, and now attempting damage control with the grace of a drunk elephant. The cow joke. She actually made the cow joke. The same joke she'd made 3 months ago when she was mocking the entire concept of small-town life. Except now it was supposed to be cute, endearing, evidence that she'd changed. I sat there in my office, in my chair that probably cost more than our entire city apartment's furniture combined, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not vindication, not even satisfaction. Just nothing. Like she was a stranger sending me a poorly written sales pitch for a product I'd already decided I didn't want. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could write so many things. I could point out that I'd told her multiple times it was a big deal. I could remind her that she'd given me an ultimatum. I could highlight the hypocrisy of her suddenly being ready, now that she'd seen proof of my success. I could be petty. I could be cruel. I could unleash 3 months of frustration in one perfectly crafted response that would make her feel exactly as small as she'd made me feel. Instead, I wrote, Claire, I appreciate you reaching out. To clarify a few things, I told you multiple times this was a significant promotion with substantial compensation. You chose not to listen. You chose not to ask questions. You chose to give me an ultimatum instead of having a conversation. I'm glad you've been doing self-reflection. That's healthy and important. But I've also been doing reflection, and what I've realized is that I'm happier now than I've been in years. I have a career I'm proud of, a team I respect, and a life that doesn't require constant compromise of my goals and values. I don't own cows. I have a 6-figure salary and peace of mind. I wish you well, but I don't think reconciliation is in either of our best interests. Take care. Marcus. I read it over once, made sure it was firm but not cruel, and hit send before I could second-guess myself. Done. Closure. The end of a chapter one should have closed 3 months ago. Except, of course, it wasn't the end. Because Claire doesn't do closure. Claire does drama. 10 minutes later, another email. You're being unreasonable. I'm trying to fix things, and you're throwing it in my face. I said I was sorry. What more do you want from me? I didn't respond. I had a meeting with Leonard about Q4 projections, and that was infinitely more important than explaining to my ex-wife why. I'm sorry you saw evidence of my success and now regret your decision isn't actually an apology. But the emails kept coming. Every few hours, another one. Each progressively more desperate, more accusatory, more revealing of the fact that this wasn't about missing me or missing us. This was about missing the lifestyle she could have had if she'd just bothered to pay attention. You know I loved you. You're really going to throw that away. My friends all think you're being petty. Naomi says you're clearly trying to punish me. I looked up houses in Millbrook. Some of them are actually nice. I could make it work. Fine. Don't respond. But you're going to regret this when you're alone in that boring town with no one who actually understands you. That last one almost made me laugh. No one who understands me. Claire never understood me. She understood the version of me that fit into her Instagram aesthetic and didn't challenge her comfort zone. The real me, the ambitious me, the career-focused me, the me who wanted more than rooftop brunches and overpriced yoga, that guy was invisible to her. I blocked her email address. Should have done it months ago, honestly, but better late than never. That evening, I got a text from Margaret. I heard Claire reached out to you after seeing your LinkedIn post. I'm sorry. She's not handling reality well. You don't owe her anything. Enjoy your success. You earned it. I sent back a heart emoji, because sometimes that's all you need to say. Then I did something I'd been putting off for 3 months. I updated my Facebook relationship status from married to separated. It felt weirdly final, clicking that button. Like I was officially admitting that my marriage was over, not just on pause or going through a rough patch, but actually, genuinely over. The notifications started immediately. People I hadn't talked to in years suddenly appearing in my DMs with "You okay?" and "What happened?" and "I always thought you two were solid." I ignored most of them. The people who mattered already knew the story. The people who didn't matter didn't need to. But one message stood out. From Sophie, the town's veterinarian who I'd met at a local business networking event last month. We'd talked for maybe 20 minutes about the challenges of running a small business in a small town, and she'd been funny and smart and refreshingly normal. Not Instagram filter normal, just actual human normal. Her message read, "Saw your relationship update. Sorry you're going through that. If you ever need someone to talk to who won't judge or give unsolicited advice, I'm around. Also, if you want to meet some dogs who definitely won't judge you, my clinic is always open." Dog. I smiled. Actually smiled at my phone like a teenager with a crush, which was ridiculous because I was a grown man going through a divorce, and I had no business smiling at messages from attractive veterinarians who rescued stray dogs and seemed genuinely nice. I typed back, "Thanks. I might take you up on that dog offer. I've been thinking about getting one now that I have a yard." Her response came back within minutes. "Best decision you'll ever make. Dogs are better than people." That's not cynicism. That's just facts. We texted back and forth for the next hour about nothing important. Dog breeds, the best hiking trails around Millbrook, whether the new Italian restaurant downtown was any good. Verdict: much better than Olive Garden. Actually pretty legitimate. It was easy, comfortable, the kind of conversation that doesn't feel like work. Around 9 p.m., I realized I'd spent an hour texting Sophie and hadn't thought about Claire once. Hadn't checked my email to see if she'd found some new way to contact me. Hadn't spiraled into anger or regret or any of the emotions that usually came with thinking about my failed marriage. I just existed, happily, in my new life, with my new possibilities. That night, I fell asleep thinking about maybe adopting a dog. A big one. The kind that needs space to run and wouldn't survive in a city apartment. The kind Claire would have vetoed immediately because it didn't fit her aesthetic. The kind that belonged in exactly the life I'd built for myself. Claire could come crawling back all she wanted. I wasn't home anymore. You know what's more expensive than a good lawyer? A bad marriage. And you know what's more entertaining than reality TV? Watching your ex-wife's legal threats implode in real time like a poorly constructed house of cards in a wind tunnel. Welcome to Chapter 8, folks, where Claire decided that since love letters and desperate emails hadn't worked, maybe intimidation through the legal system would do the trick. Spoiler alert, it didn't. The letter arrived on a Wednesday, delivered by certified mail, which is how you know someone means business or at least wants you to think they mean business. I signed for it during my lunch break, and the mail carrier, a woman named Denise who I'd gotten to know over the past few months because small towns are like that, gave me a sympathetic look that said she'd seen enough legal correspondence to know this wasn't a birthday card. "You need a hug, hon?" Denise asked, and I genuinely couldn't tell if she was joking. "I'll let you know after I read it," I said, taking the envelope back to my office. The letterhead read, "Morrison and Associates, Family Law Attorneys," in that fancy font that's supposed to make you nervous. Inside was 3 pages of legal jargon that basically boiled down to: Claire was suing me for financial compensation because apparently I'd concealed material information about my financial situation and made unilateral decisions that negatively impacted her future earning potential and quality of life. I read it twice, then a third time. Then I started laughing so hard that my assistant knocked on my door to make sure I wasn't having a medical emergency. "Boss, you okay in there?" "Yeah," I called back, wiping tears from my eyes. "Just reading the funniest thing I've seen all year." The letter went on to claim that by accepting the promotion without Claire's informed consent, her lawyer's words, not mine, I had essentially committed financial fraud against our marriage. That I had deliberately withheld information about my salary increase to manipulate the situation in my favor. That Claire had suffered emotional and financial damages as a result of my deceptive behavior. It was beautiful, truly, a masterpiece of creative fiction. Someone should nominate Claire's lawyer for a Pulitzer in the category of most creative use of alternative facts. The letter demanded compensation to the tune of, wait for it, $250,000. Plus legal fees, plus a formal apology, plus a written acknowledgement that I had emotionally and financially abused her during our marriage. I took a photo of the letter and texted it to my own lawyer, a woman named Sylvia Chun who I'd hired a month ago when I realized this divorce was going to be more complicated than just signing papers and moving on with my life. Sylvia was a shark. The kind of lawyer who smiled when you presented her with nonsense like this because it meant she got to flex her legal muscles and destroy someone's ridiculous arguments. She called me back within 20 minutes. Marcus, Marcus, Marcus. She was laughing so hard she could barely speak. This is the most delusional legal filing I've seen in my 15 years of practice. So I'm not crazy? This is as ridiculous as I think it is. Ridiculous doesn't even cover it. This is insane. She's claiming you concealed your salary? You told her about the promotion multiple times, correct? Multiple times. Tried to discuss it. She shut me down every time. And she explicitly refused to relocate regardless of the circumstances? Her exact words were, "I am not moving to that boring town. Ever." I remember it clearly because it's burned into my brain like a brand. Sylvia laughed again, that delighted laugh lawyers get when opposing counsel has handed them an easy victory. Oh, this is going to be fun. Give me a week to draft a response. In the meantime, do you have any documentation of your attempts to discuss this with her? Texts? Emails? Anything? I have the email where I told her I accepted the job and when the movers were coming. Perfect. Send it to me. Also, send me that LinkedIn post that apparently triggered this whole meltdown. I want to see what finally made her realize she screwed up. I sent her everything. The emails. The LinkedIn post. Screenshots of Claire's desperate messages after she saw my success. The whole digital paper trail of my marriage's implosion. Sylvia was going to have a field day. Her response letter arrived at Morrison & Associates exactly 1 week later. She copied me on it, and I read it in my office with a cup of coffee and the biggest smile I'd had since moving to Millbrook. The letter was a work of art, a legal evisceration wrapped in professional language. Let me share some highlights. Claim of financial concealment and marital damages. Dear Mr. Morrison, we write in response to your letter dated October 15th on behalf of Ms. Claire Hartley. After reviewing the claims presented, we must respectfully inform you that your client's allegations are not supported by facts, evidence, or basic logic. Factual record. Mr. Hale informed Ms. Hartley of his promotion opportunity on multiple occasions over a 3-week period. Ms. Hartley explicitly refused to consider relocation, stating, "I am not moving to that boring town. Ever." Direct quote, confirmed by multiple witnesses to the conversation. Ms. Hartley gave Mr. Hale an ultimatum. Decline the promotion or end the marriage. Mr. Hale chose his career. Ms. Hartley chose her lifestyle. Regarding concealment, Mr. Hale did not conceal his salary. He discussed the promotion multiple times. Ms. Hartley chose not to ask follow-up questions about compensation. Choosing not to listen is not the same as being denied information. This distinction is critical and appears to be lost on your client. Regarding financial damages, Ms. Hartley claims she suffered financial damages due to Mr. Hale's relocation. However, Ms. Hartley was invited to relocate with Mr. Hale and would have benefited from his increased income. She declined this opportunity. You cannot claim damages from a benefit you voluntarily refused. Regarding emotional abuse, Mr. Hale accepting a promotion is not emotional abuse. It is called career advancement. Ms. Hartley refusing to support her husband's career advancement and then claiming victimhood when he proceeded anyway is not grounds for legal action. It is, however, grounds for therapy. Conclusion. Your client explicitly refused relocation regardless of circumstances. No damages are owed. We strongly suggest Ms. Hartley redirect her energy toward accepting responsibility for her own choices rather than attempting to legally punish her ex-husband for making sound career decisions. Please govern yourself accordingly and refrain from further frivolous legal threats. Regards. Sylvia Chun, ESQ. I called Sylvia immediately. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever read. I toned it down, believe it or not, she said. My first draft used the phrase weapons-grade delusion, but I thought that might be unprofessional. It's perfect. What happens now? Now? Either they drop it and slink away quietly, or they push forward and I make them look like idiots in court. Either way, you're fine. This case has 0 merit. Less than 0. Negative merit. 2 days later, I got a call from Morrison & Associates. Not a letter. A call. From Mr. Morrison himself, not his paralegal or secretary. He sounded tired, defeated, like a man who'd realized he'd taken on a client whose case was made of tissue paper and wishes. Mr. Hale, this is Robert Morrison. I'm calling about the Hartley matter. Yes, I've reviewed your attorney's response, and, frankly, she makes several compelling points. I've also had some additional conversations with my client about the timeline of events and the nature of the communications between you both. Translation: he'd realized Claire had lied or at least heavily edited her version of events, and now he was stuck representing someone who dragged him into a case with no legal standing. I'm advising my client to withdraw the claim and pursue an amicable divorce settlement instead. I don't think litigation is in anyone's best interest here. I appreciate you calling, I said, because I'm not a monster and he was just doing his job. I think that's a wise decision. For what it's worth, he added, sounding even more tired, congratulations on the promotion. My nephew works in tech, and he says Project Atlas is impressive work. We hung up. Case closed. Legal threats neutralized. Claire's attempt to extract money from me through intimidation failed spectacularly. But here's where it gets really good. Because Claire, bless her heart, couldn't just accept defeat quietly. She had to take it to Instagram. The post appeared that evening. A photo of her looking sad and contemplative, very curated sadness, professional lighting, probably took 47 takes, with a caption about financial abuse and men who use money as a weapon and fighting for what's right even when the system is rigged against women. The comments started sympathetic. Lots of, "You're so brave," and "Keep fighting, Queen," and the usual Instagram outrage that happens when someone posts their grievances without context. But then, someone, I suspect Margaret, though I can't prove it, commented with a simple question: didn't he offer to take you with him when he got promoted? And didn't you refuse? The floodgates opened. Other people who apparently knew both of us started chiming in. People who'd heard Claire's version for months and were now seeing holes in the story. Former mutual friends who'd stayed quiet but were now speaking up. Wait, you told us he took a lateral move? I thought you said he never discussed it with you? Didn't you literally laugh at the idea of moving when we talked about this at brunch? Even Naomi, her ride-or-die friend who'd participated in mocking me through video chat, commented, "Claire, come on. We were there when you said you didn't care about the money. You can't change the story now." The post got deleted within 3 hours. But screenshots live forever, and the internet never forgets. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. "Did you see your ex-wife's Instagram implosion? Small-town gossip travels fast." Unfortunately, yes. Well, if you need a distraction from the drama, I have a 3-month-old golden retriever at the clinic who needs a home. Just saying. Dogs don't sue you for following your dreams. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud in my empty house. I'll be there tomorrow. That night, I poured myself a bourbon, a ritual I'd developed for celebrating victories, small and large, and sat on my porch thinking about how Claire had tried every tactic in the book. Love bombing, guilt trips, desperate reconciliation attempts, legal threats, public sympathy campaigns. Every single one had failed because the foundation of her argument was fundamentally flawed. She wanted me to take responsibility for consequences of her own choices. The legal drama was over. The comedy show had ended. All that was left was paperwork and time, 2 things I had plenty of. And tomorrow, I was getting a dog. A golden retriever who would love me unconditionally and never complain about small towns or file frivolous lawsuits. Best decision I'd made since accepting that promotion. Well, second best. The promotion was still number 1. But the dog was definitely going to be a close second. 1 year, 12 months, 365 days since I'd loaded up a moving truck and drove away from everything I thought I knew about my life. And you know what? Best year of my entire existence. Hands down, no contest. I bought the house. Not the rental, though I could have kept that, but an actual 4-bedroom colonial with 2 acres of land and a view that didn't include a single concrete building or traffic jam. The realtor had looked at me like I was crazy when I made an offer $20,000 over asking price just to make sure I got it. But when you're pulling down the kind of money I was making, 20 grand is basically a rounding error. The mortgage payment was less than what I used to pay for that shoebox apartment in the city, which still made me laugh every time I wrote the check. Then I bought a lake cabin. Because why not? I had the money. I had the time. And I discovered that owning a place where you can disappear for weekends and just exist without obligations is actually priceless. The cabin was small, 2 bedrooms, nothing fancy, but it had a dock and a boat and silence that you can't buy in the city no matter how rich you are. My bonus checks had gotten so big I'd stopped checking them. Seriously, they just appeared in my account every quarter like magic, and I'd glance at the notification, see another 6 figures, and just shrug. That's what happens when your division exceeds expectations and your company rewards actual performance instead of just talking about it in corporate buzzword presentations. Cooper, my golden retriever, named after my favorite bourbon, had grown into 90 pounds of pure love and terrible breath. He destroyed exactly 2 pairs of shoes, 1 couch cushion, and 0% of my sanity, because apparently having a dog is like having a therapist who can't talk back and just wants to make you happy. Best trade-off ever. And Sophie. God, Sophie. We'd been dating for 8 months now, taking it slow because we were both adults with baggage and responsibilities and enough sense not to rush into anything. She was everything Claire wasn't. Down to earth, supportive, genuinely interested in my work instead of just tolerating it. She wore jeans with actual dirt on them from working at her clinic. She thought $300 handbags were ridiculous. She laughed at my jokes even when they weren't funny. She met Cooper and immediately sat on my floor playing with him for an hour, completely unconcerned about getting dog hair on her clothes. When I told her about Claire calling Millbrook a cultural wasteland, Sophie had laughed so hard she spilled coffee on my shirt. Cultural wasteland? We have a community theater, 2 art galleries, a farmer's market, and the best Italian food outside of actual Italy. What more does she want? A Starbucks on every corner. That's when I knew. Not in some dramatic rom-com moment with swelling music, but in a quiet, certain way that felt like coming home. I was finally with someone real. Someone who saw me as a partner, not an accessory to her lifestyle. Life was good. Life was peaceful. Life was everything I'd hoped it would be when I made that insane decision to choose myself over someone else's comfort zone. The boring small town with the boring job and the boring life turned out to be anything but boring. Turned out to be exactly what I needed. At a tech conference in the city. My old city, the one I'd escaped. I ran into Claire's parents at the hotel bar. Margaret and Richard, looking older but somehow lighter, like they'd shed some weight I couldn't see. "Marcus," Richard said, standing up to shake my hand. "We owe you an apology." I sat down, curious. "We raised Claire to value appearances over substance," Margaret admitted, her eyes wet. "Designer bags over character. Instagram likes over actual happiness. We taught her that success meant looking successful, not being successful. You made the right call, son. You deserved better than what our daughter was willing to give you." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Driving back to Millbrook that night, past the city lights fading into darkness and then into stars, I thought about everything. Claire hadn't lost me because of the job. She'd lost me because she never saw us as a team. For her, life was performing for an audience. For me, it was partnership. Now, every time I mow my yard in peace, grill steak without neighbors complaining, or cash a bonus check, I chuckle to myself. Boring small town, huh? Guess I'll just cry into my $600,000 pillow.